Are you having a problem staying on track with your practice, or even practicing at all? Today, I'll show you how to realize that things are going off the rails and show you how to make some changes before it's too late. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to this episode of the Play Guitar Podcast. I am Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. If you're new here, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast and then check out the description for all of the links from the show. Okay, so I've got a whole outline of what I want to get to today, but I just want to talk to you about what this is first. Do a little not off script, but off outline. This is the talk. This is the talk I have for a lot of students, a few in particular lately, about practice and what happens with practice and what do you do when you get off track. It's nothing magical, but it's very helpful. And I've had this on the brain a lot, and I thought today would be the day that I share it with you, because I know, you guys are my students too, in a way. You're not you're not my people. I don't know you to see you, but we share time together, and I'm pretty sure either you're going through this now or you've gone through this recently, with some struggles with practice. So I thought, hey, I'm just going to talk right to you and tell you what this is. And I'll go through my outline, but I'm going to take little breaks in the outline and just kind of talk to you today about this. It happens to everybody. It's been happening to me since I started playing in 82, and had a desire to learn this instrument. Still do, and had different phases, different styles of music I wanted to play, different situations I was in, different bands I was in, had different goals for my practice all the time. But the one thing that was consistent was it would get tough to stay on target, and I don't think I'm no different than you. There's nothing special. I'm just, talking about this stuff. And I found that talking about this helps, because what happens is if you're if you're a practicer, you sit down to practice and you do it, and you're not worried. You're not looking at the big picture. You're looking at the small picture. You're looking at, what am I doing today? What am I going to work on? And you may never think of the big picture. And then that puts you in the rut. Yeah, the rut. And we all know what the rut feels like, and it's no fun, because this is your fun thing. Guitar is the fun thing to do. So this is the disconnect we have. It's our fun thing, but it's also it can be a very stressful thing. So here's the direction we're going to go. First, we're going to talk about what is a solid practice routine to you. What does that mean to you? So start thinking about this now before I start going into all this stuff. What does a solid practice routine mean to you? What does that look like? How is that structured? And then we're going to talk about, what happens when it goes off course? What happens when you find yourself stuck? What are the reasons it happens? So if we can figure out what a good practice is and what the reasons are that we get derailed, that makes it very easy to talk about, what can we do to avoid that or to remedy that when it happens? Because what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to stop playing guitar, because a lot of people do that for decades. And I'm talking to you. A lot of you loved it. I loved this when I was in high school. I loved it when I was in my 20s. In my 30s, it went away. What happened? So then we're going to talk about, what do we do? And a lot of that is mental. This whole thing's mental. This is a mental game. It's an exercise. How do we go through all of this work to get to the place we want to be, which is having fun playing the guitar and doing something that sounds meaningful, being able to play in a way that you feel like you're holding your own. When I have new coaching students come in, so coaching, I talked about this in an email recently. I may have mentioned this on the podcast. I don't remember, but the differences between guitar lessons and coaching. And it kind of there is a guitar lesson part of it too, but that the coaching part is I direct the flow of the practice. I see the end goal, and I keep pointing you in the right direction, keep making sure that you stay on track, and also give the guitar lesson part too. It's a life thing, and it's making sure that everything that you're working on is for the prize, for what you want to do. I don't want any of my students to sound like me. It's one of the, proudest things. When I taught a lot of in-person lessons in Central Georgia area. If you go there now and you go and watch some bands, they're going to be a good bit of my students who I may have taught when they were kids and are out there now playing all the time. Not one of them sounds like me. I didn't just show them the licks that I played and say, learn this and get out there and do it. Right. Not one of them does. They all sound like themselves, and they're all musical, and it's fantastic. We're going to take into consideration the things that you want to do, and then the things that I want for you. I see the cracks. I see the skills that you're missing. And I know once we shore up all those skills, then you can start really moving forward steadily. And then what we take is the things that the student wants to do, what everything, what the big goals are for them. And we have like 3-month goal, we set a whole bunch of stuff, and I make sure that anything we work on has both of those two goals aligned. And it's like an arrow. It points you forward, and you will get better, quicker, faster, and have more fun. So I do coaching. That's how coaching is different than lessons. It's really fantastic. It's a lot of fun. And this is something I do in coaching a lot, the talk. So let's have the talk today. I'm going to bring the talk to you. Right now we're in spring, and there's certain times of the year that are tougher than other times. Spring is one of those times. Why is that? Well, we've gone through the beginning of the year, January. That's the big practicing time. That's the big practice time for the whole year. You've either got a bunch of gear in December that you want to, get better at, or you're one of those people who, it's like the exercise type thing. It's the first of the year. I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm really going to get this thing that I've been wanting to do. I'm buckling down now. And then over February, March, we're cooped up, a lot of staying in the house. And now the weather's starting to change. And things are happening other than you staying in your house practicing. Time has changed. That threw me for a loop. Time has changed for a lot of people. I guess in your area, in the United States, this is the spring forward, right? And this one kicked me in threw me for a loop, I guess is a better way to say it, right? Took me 3 weeks to get used to it. But things are changing right now, but we're well-meaning. We want to get better at the guitar. We want to practice, have that time to practice. But there's things, we've become busy now. We have a lot of new activities going on, which is causing stress. And all the things I talked about can contribute to getting off track with your guitar practice. And a lot of people are finding that right now. Right now, things are getting a little off track. But getting off track, it can happen at any time. And most times when it does happen, you don't realize it's when you least expect it, right? You may not even notice that things have started falling apart. And it's easy for us when we're narrow vision, right? It's easiest to get led down a path that we weren't expecting. It's easy to get led away from that solid routine that we're going to talk about in a second. So what can we do? How can we take the initiative? How can we think ahead and prepare for this to happen? The rut. How can we prepare for the inevitable? Well, that's the talk that we're having today. We talk it out. When you talk this out, it can change the way you approach everything. So I'm going to share my experiences today so that you can prepare for yours. So we don't have to go through this all the time. And plus, at the end, once we've gone through all this, I'm going to show you how I do it. My secret tip. It's not really so secret to get my practice back on track. Okay. So let's bring all this out into the open. What is a solid guitar practice routine to you? What does that mean to you? Think about it. What does it mean to you? There's a couple different ways it can go. For some, it's very organized. Well, I sit down, I have my papers, I go through the beginning, middle, end, and I do it. And when I'm done going through everything that's organized, then I move on to the next thing. I kind of dump it. I did what I was supposed to do. And tomorrow I'll do it again and I'll do what I was supposed to. And that's great. That's fantastic. As organized as you can be. That's great. But it could be more of an obvious thing. It could be you're excited about something. You're excited about learning something. So you run the practice and you sit down and you know exactly what you're going to do because you know what you're excited about. And you do that every single day. The problem with that one is it runs out after a while, right? So we've got those are the two biggies, the solid practice routines. What does a solid practice routine mean? It means that your life runs side by side with your practice in tandem. Life's going along and practice is going along and everything's going great. Nothing is getting in the way. And this is the target. This is what you want. It's fleeting though. It doesn't last a long time. When you do have it, hold on to it. That's the zone we want to stay in. Life and practice, getting along, moving along. But then at some point, we get to part 2 of today's talk, which is when you find yourself stuck. What are the reasons that you get stuck? Can you remember the last time you got stuck at guitar? What was the reason that it happened? You found yourself there. You didn't put yourself there. You found yourself there. There's a couple reasons it could happen. One is abrupt changes to the solid routine. They can come from family. You have obligations that take you out of being able to be on time with your routine or regular with your routine. It could be an abrupt change in work. You get a new job, you lose your job, right? So you could either, you find yourself with no time to practice now or a lot more time to practice now, right? It could be health. Things are going along good. And then, you have a health issue and that it could be your elbow. We've had a lot of elbow problems lately, wrist problems. Could be something like that where you have to take some time off. And so you're in a rut. You want to be practicing. You want to be getting better. And there's something else that has come in and taken you away from it. That's not the only way you can get stuck. There can be gradual changes with this too. Think about that, where you're just going along, everything's going good, but inside something's not quite right as you keep practicing. The first one is interest. Your interest could be waning. I think we've all experienced this at one time. Yeah, big ideas. We're going for it. Here, I'm practicing this stuff every day, right? And then it could be a week in, 2 weeks in, even 3 weeks in. And you start to realize, man, I didn't realize that it was going to deal with all this, right? I didn't realize that I was going to be having to do these things just to get what I wanted to do. Or it could be just like, oh, well, now that I see that I can do this, it's not, the mystery isn't there anymore. The interest goes away over time. Another gradual change is it kind of goes along with the abrupt change from like work and all this kind of things. That you could be, instead of not being able to get to your practice time, you could be pressed for time. Pressed for time. So you could have, okay, I've got my regular time to practice from 8 to 9, let's just say, right? But at 8:30, I've got this stuff that I got to do. And at 9:05, I've got this stuff to do. So if things don't go well in my practice, that's it. So I'm going to, rush my way through the practice because I got to take these people over there and I got to, all that kind of stuff. Right. So as you do that over time, yeah, you're practicing and yeah, you're doing it, but you're surrounded with a lot of things that are making you trying to speed your way through practice. It wears you down over time. You could also gradually lose your way, get a loss of focus. You could find something else that you would like to do better than guitar. It happens. I know this. Can you believe it? Can you believe I'm saying it? It's things change over time. Not everyone, can stay as excited about guitar all the time for years and years and years. I'm weird. I do, but not everybody does. Right. What's the other big thing? So we talked about abrupt changes. We talked about gradual changes. The other thing is stress. That when you do practice, you're just high strung when you get down to practicing and you're not retaining things. Does that sound familiar to the few of you who know I'm talking about you? Right? The stress of practicing. The big one. What's the big one? We all know the guy, remember the meme of the guy who's sitting there practicing? You can tell he's struggling. You can see in his face his blood pressure is going up. I love that. And then he just picks up his guitar, just slams it on the ground. And you can tell it wasn't for show. If it was, he did a good job with that. It was like pure frustration, right? You feel like you're spinning your wheels sometimes. You're putting all this time and effort in. Your time is valuable. You're putting the time in. You're not getting the results. What could it be? It could be that you're missing some skills to do the thing that you want to do. And it's not obvious. It's not apparent that you need to work on some other things to be able to do the thing that you want to do. Right? So that causes stress. Practice frustration is difficult to deal with. You're feeling excited about practicing, but you hate practicing. Right? Sound familiar? I know a few people like that. I love practicing. I hate practicing. It's all about being flexible and being able to switch gears. That's how we're going to deal with this. Okay? Get flexible with this stuff. You're in the long game. Guitar's not a short game thing. This is difficult. It's a lifelong thing. It's something that has seasons. Not everything is going to happen all at once. This is a long-term project that you're on, and it has phases. But what's great about this is that one phase is not any more important than the other. We all think, well, I'm a beginner now. And so what I'm playing is not important now, but I'll get to the important stuff. And guess what? You take that along when you're an intermediate. Well, I'm intermediate now, but when I become an advanced player, that's when I'm really going to be playing. I don't have really anything to say right now. And then you get to be an advanced player and you're like, did I do the right thing? Did I spend all that time? Am I happy here? Maybe I want to do something else. It's always on the other side, right? So if we realize that we're playing the long game, we're on the journey, it takes a lot of that stress away. What we're looking for now is steady progress, not quick progress. And we have something important to say at every stage. Your ideas as a beginner are very important. Because let me tell you something, along the way, you're going to forget those ideas. You're going to be distracted with all the new things that you're learning. And sometimes you're going to forget the reason you started doing this in the first place. And that's gold. The things that you think as a beginner going into the guitar need to be kept alive throughout your journey. That's the reason. Because what'll happen is you're going to get away from it. And then later on, you're going to have to sit down and think you're going to have to sit there and talk to me and go, well, I don't even know what I'm doing with this. Well, what's the reason you started playing guitar in the first place? Can't even remember. And then we'd have to do some soul searching. Why are we doing this in the first place? Oh, yeah. Steady progress towards a goal. Also, we're dealing with repetition. If you're constantly throwing new things at yourself all the time and jettisoning, that's a weird word, and getting rid of what you just played, what you just learned. Oh, I just learned this, but now I'm on to something else. And now I'm on to something else. What ends up happening, you have that kind of conquering feeling. Well, I can do that. I worked on that once. Well, when's the last time you played that? Well, I hadn't played it since I worked on it. Well, you're obviously not very good at it then. It's not just the acquiring new skills. Okay. These skills have to be honed. They have, just because you can play the big 4 scale patterns doesn't mean you can play them well, right? That this is a lifelong thing. And to get those things in you, in your thoughts, so that you don't have to spend energy on them. So they just happen naturally. We need repetition. It builds your musicianship. The other thing that we want to think about being flexible with practice is that your practice today is not going to be the same as it is a year from now. And we need to understand that. We are going to go through, I said it before, seasons with practicing. You're practicing. There's going to be times where we need to do a very well-rounded scheme. We got a lot of skills that we need to build up to get to a certain point. And there's other times where you're going to be focused on maybe 1 or 2 things, because that's the smartest thing to do to get you to the next level. So those 4 things: realizing that you're playing the long game, keeping your eye on the prize with steady progress, making sure repetition is a huge part of your practice. Okay. And then the final thing is being flexible during your journey with the guitar. Just saying those things: being flexible, repetition, keeping your eye on the prize, realizing that this is a long game, not a short game. Doesn't it sound calm thinking of things that way? That if you have a bad practice, it's no big deal. Why? Because we are playing the long game. Doesn't that feel good? You can feel good about what you're doing because every day that you sit down to practice, you're feeding this long game. It doesn't have to be huge goals today, but we do have smaller goals, and these smaller goals build into bigger goals, over time. And you are not a musician at the end of the game. You are one right now because you're doing all of those things. So there it is. I gave you the talk. How's it feel? Hopefully, you can see, okay, that makes sense. I can see the forest through the trees now. I'm not going to get so stressed out about this. I'm just going to keep moving forward. If I have a bad day, it's no big deal. If I have a bad week, things are going to get better. I just need to be pointed in the right direction. Keep the repetition going, but let's talk about me. What do I do? What do I do when I get in a rut? So when I get in a rut, I think of Dick Van Dyke. It's funny the things that you remember from when you were a kid. Saturday morning cartoons. I would watch them, and there's the commercials. The commercials were just as important as the cartoons that you watch. And there was this public service announcement, and it was Dick Van Dyke. Everybody knew him, right? And it was about fire safety. And the commercial was, what do you do if you're in a fire and your clothes catch fire? What do you do? It's teaching kids how to take care of themselves if they're in an emergency. So if you're in an emergency, right, you're in shock. And when you're in shock, you don't have the mental capacity to think detailed things. You can think big things, run, right? Run, help, all of those different those different one word, one syllable things. But what he did was he said, if you find yourself in fire and you think you're close catch on fire, it was called stop, drop, and roll, right? Stop, drop, and roll. Stop what you're doing. Figure out a new plan. This is drop to the floor because I'm on fire, right? And then put it into motion. Roll. You can remember that. You're in an emergency. Stop, drop, and roll, right? Bam. Okay. I'm on fire. Bam. I'm on the ground. I'm rolling over. Now I'm good. I put it fire. Immediately. Little phrases like this, they're great for emergency situations. When you're upset, something small like this, it sticks in your brain, right? So when we know that we're stuck, but we have no idea what to do to fix it, or me, when I say stop, drop, and roll, stop it. Just put everything on the brakes. I'm beating a dead horse here. There's another terrible thing to say, beating a dead. Where'd that come from? You know, I'm not moving forward. I'm putting a bunch of effort in. Nothing's happened. What am I going to do? It's time. It's time for action. Okay. I stopped my practice right away for like a day and let myself reset. Okay. Practice isn't going well. I'm not sure I'm even enjoying this, right? Stop it. Don't just beat your head against the wall. Give yourself some time to think, to reset your mind. And I put some distance between myself and my practice schedule that wasn't working. Then when I'm ready to, I get a piece of paper and I write down how things were going. I write down, you know, what was working, what wasn't. But very importantly, I write down what was my initial goal in the first place. And what was I doing? And what do I feel was keeping me from progressing? Once you have all that and you can see it, to me, it helps to write it down. Some people it doesn't, but to me, it really does. Then I do a little research and I make some changes and I make a new schedule that may work for me. And and then I test it. I test it out over a few days and see, was this working any better than what I was doing before? I'm always testing. So with practice, that could be a good thing to say. I'm always testing. I'm always saying, is this schedule working for me? Is this keeping me moving forward? That's what I do with my coaching students. I'm always testing. First thing I say is, how's your practice going? How's your practice going? Email goes out. Hey, how's your practice going? Right? I get a lot of information from that. But already, when I go through this thing, just the fact that I did something about it, just the fact that I took action because my practice wasn't working, it puts me in a better headspace. Makes me feel better than I was when I was forcing that old routine that stopped working. So there we go. That's all of it today. I hope this helped. I hope, you know, even if you're not currently going through something like this, remember this. Stop, drop, and roll. You know, this isn't working. I'm not going to spend 40 years doing the same thing and then realizing, hey, I haven't gotten any better. Right. I'm going to do something today. I'm going to take some time off, think about this. And you can think of it as your practice time. Sit down and write some stuff out. That's just as important as going through these scales over and over again and not getting any better. Right. In fact, it's more important to get your head on straight first before you start moving forward. Okay. All right. So I have something for you for free today that may help with this. Maybe get your area feeling better, sounding better. It's my free guitar practice space checklist, and you can get this, download it, and get set up for success. And it's over at playguitaracademy.com/practice-space. But I got a link for it in the show notes. Just click down there and you can go over there and grab it. And I appreciate it. So I hope that you're not going through this, but if you are, I hope I helped today. And I'll see you next week. Okay. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave me a favorable Apple Podcasts iTunes review. It's the best way to make sure we get this super valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help, structure, and results in your guitar playing sound good to you, what are you waiting for? Play Guitar Academy is here. This is the world's most exciting, and I'm working on it all the time, and it's carefully playing guitar system. And together we will build your online home base for guitar. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next episode.